my name is Omar, and today I would like to talk about the God protocol of Sam Gerrans and why I don't think that it makes sense. So this is I don't know if it's criticism, it's rather just my viewpoint, my opinion, my perspective, and I talked about that topic in several of my other videos because I want to push my idea and my findings. And first off, I have to say that the work of Sam is not yet finished. It's still in the process of making. But I want to look at the means on how he gains the knowledge out of the Quran, which are then the basis of his conclusions. And Sam has a very specific method, especially in the regards of the God protocol, to gain knowledge from the text, and that is his pantextual analysis, the way he made his work, the Quran, a complete revelation, the way he solved the muqatta'at. It has been always the same process. So the findings of the muqatta'at implied, or it is he who implies that this is the method of how you should look at words, or you should look at the meanings of words. And you can see that when he is talking about the journey of Musa, of the mission of Musa to Pharaoh, to the Pharaoh. It is I would call it the ignorance of the setting of this confrontation, because he treats Pharaoh as a normal name, but we know, and we can clearly get that he is more than just a person who rules. And this is especially true when we just travel through the land and see how was the final outcome of the Pharaoh. And God gives us a lot of hints in the Quranic text on how to understand the person, the stereotypical person, as the leader of a civilization. In this case, the Pharaoh. We have the same word, but in Arabic, Pharaoh is just not a name. It's not a name as Pope is a name. It's like in a case it's just the same. But the Pope's name is not the Pope. He has a normal name, and he has a title, which is also a name. And that's the same with the Pharaoh. Ramses II, for example, he was the Pharaoh, Ramses II, but he had also a normal name. And I treat that, and I looked at the person, the historical person, the historical figure of a pharaoh. What is a pharaoh? And you get a sense from the Quran, because he says in numerous verses that he himself proclaims him as God. I am the God. I am your Lord. And he is acknowledged by that from all the other people in his world. And the only ones who are opposing that are the children of Israel, Bani Israel. And the reason for that is because they cannot accept a human deity. They cannot accept a partner besides God because they are monotheists. It is the same reason they were oppressed than the early Christians, the real Christians in Rome were oppressed. And the same reason the Jews were oppressed in Babylon. It has always been the same setting. We had always a polytheistic regime that is based upon the same continuous principle throughout the ages. We have the same religion, the New Age religion. Those civilizations were always sun worshippers, in a kind of sense. They also believed in reincarnation. They also believed in immortality. This is significant because we see in the Quran, in numerous cases, that it is this doctrine that is the means of how the Satan deceived Adam and Eve in the garden. They say, when you eat from this tree, you will become like God and you will become immortal. And this is the way he deceives humankind and has ever deceived that since. And the Pharaoh has a specific mythos, always, because he has his legitimacy from the heavens and the earth, and he is he's like the top of the humans, on top of the pyramid, who is the communication between the gods. And he's the spiritual and the worldly leader. So he's both combined. And he always united the whole people under his rulership, under his God king, under his God kingdomship. And throughout the ages we had in Egypt, we had the Pharaoh. In Babylon, it was the same. We had a Pharaoh too, but he was called Tammuz. And we had in other regions, in the Nordic, we had Thor. And in India, we had Krishna. And we had Indra. And there are so many names. Mitra in Persia. They all had the same doctrine and they had the same characteristics. And today, and this is very important, we have a figure that fits all the criteria of those so-called avatars or saviors or messiahs. And this figure is Christos. It's Christ. It is not the historical person, Jesus Christ, but it is the personification of the Son of God, or the Son which is the God, and the human, the Savior who comes to unite all people under his light, and who brings the enlightenment, Illuminati, to the people. And this person has always been the personification of the Son. And that's the reason they all have the same attributes. And he will come when when mankind is ready for him. And the spiritual hierarchy that is hidden, the invisible hierarchy, they say that they are the disciples of Christ. So they are the ones who are preparing his kingdom, the kingdom of Christ, to unite all mankind. So he's just another instance of all the other avatars, all the other saviors that have been on the top of the specific local civilizations in the past. And this is what the goal of the today's elite is. The goal of the today's elite is not to create a George Orwell dystopia where everything is just depressing and so on and so forth. They don't want that. They will do that in certain parts of the world to bring the collectivistic mindset, to bring the collectivistic enlightenment as form of evolution to the next ladder, to the next step. So they just do it in the means of their continuous plan that everybody in the end will get united. And this is one aspect that I criticize, or it's not really criticized, but that Sam has not yet figured out. Because he's on the step where it says, oh, this is going to be a tyranny, and we are living in that, and we have to warn the elite now to prevent that in any sort of kind. But when we look at the instances in the Quran where the prophets are warning, they are in an eye-to-eye conversation. They're in a physical conversation with the leader. So how will you do that when the leader, or when the leaders are invisible now? And the thing is that they will come, or they will not stay hidden all the time. They will come into public when the Messiah arrives. So the Messiah is going to be on the top. And everybody will know him. Everybody will see him with his eyes and his ears, and everybody will accept his doctrine. And his doctrine is the same doctrine as before, as in Egypt, as in Babylon, as in all the other great civilizations, as in Atlantis. It is love. It is reincarnation. We are all gods. We are all immortals. And this is what we see now. We see now the uprising of New Age and everything. It has to, in part, it has to do with the age of Aquarius. We are now in the age of Pisces, 2020 years in, but eventually we will go in the spiritual way into a new age, and it's the age of Aquarius. And it is getting promoted right now, like very heavily, and this is going to be the new world religion. They will use all the all the other religions to combine, and we can prove that if we look at the eschatologies of, for example, Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity. They all have a savior figure. And this Christ, this avatar, this Pharaoh, who will establish the new world order, will be the one who will fulfill all the prophecies that have been, of course, been written by the spiritual hierarchy, i.e. the elite. And everybody will accept it, except for those who know the truth, who know that he is not the real God, who is not, like, that his doctrine is false. It is the same situation, it's the same staging as Adam and Eve in the garden. And it always has been that way, that everybody will fall into submission in a literal way. We can see that in Islam now. We have 1.8 billion people who are falling down into submission on a physical way to a cube in the desert, and they will evolve that into falling down onto this one person. And there are going to be people who will not fall down, who will stand up. And then we have the same situation like on the very first, in the beginning, when God says to the angels, submit to Adam, and all submitted except Iblis. But now the roles are reverted. Everybody is going to fall unto the doctrine. All men are going to fall down. They will submit to the doctrine of Iblis, to the personification of Iblis, and to his plan that has been growing over the past 2,700 years since the Roman Empire. The beginning of the Roman Empire. Yeah, boys, we still live in Rome. But now it is not the angels who are prostrating to Adam. Now it is mankind submitting to Iblis, and everybody will do that except for those who have a pure heart. Like Iblis promised that to God, and like God said in the pre-worldly time, in the pre-worldly events. And they will stand up, like they always have stood up. And then the leaders, of course, they will see them. They will ask, why do you not submit? I don't know if he, when he comes, will ask that. But those who are standing, they will say, I only submit to the Lord of all mankind. And you have to follow him. And I await for you an evil punishment if you don't. And I fear the day when the stars are falling and when the day of judgment arrives. And then he will argue face to face, or when it is one individual, maybe there are more individuals, and they will argue then. And this is the setting. This is the moment God is talking when you look at all the instances, except for the one with Musa, because in the case of Musa, he was coming from outside directly into the palace. But they will have a discussion, and then he will turn around. He will turn away, the believer. He will turn away from the Christ, and then he will say he can speak the first time to all mankind, and he then can warn the whole world, something that Muhammad 1400 years ago couldn't, because there was no world community, no world civilization. This is the first time. It's not the first time. We had Atlantis before. God says we had mankind was one community, and I think it was Atlantis. So it is after the flood, and we have now the avatar who comes to a united world. And of course we have the technological means, and we have virtual reality and all those things, so that everybody can receive the so-called detonating phrase of all my people. Yeah, because he will then can speak to all mankind, and he will say, all my people serve God alone, and so on and so forth. And then all mankind has to choose between those two sides. Everybody who's like in the so-called sajda, who is with his head on the ground, he has the chance to decide between truth and lie, between good and evil, between reality and illusion. This is like the absolute climax. This is going to be the absolute climax of mankind. And this is what the elite always tries to hide from us. That this constellation, that this situation can occur. Because they know that this has happened. And if you look into the Matrix, not the film, but into the construction, into the means of preparing the world for the Christ, it all indicates to that. There's of course the flat earth and evolution, so on and so forth. But this is what they want to prevent, and this is what they want to hide. And this situation will eventually come. And after that, those who believe, or they believe in the proofs the warner, in this case one believing individual, they can stand up too, and they will do the same, and they will encourage the others to believe in him. And after that process has been finished, after all mankind has been collectively warned, then the punishments of God become binding. So in this setting, the God protocol of Sam Garins with the 3 components, they make sense. They make sense. They make absolute sense. And it makes sense from the other side, from what the elite wants to do. And like I already said, it is not the tyranny of George Orwell or Brave New World. They will do that, and they will create this desperation and this I don't know. My words are lost, but you know what I mean. This gray world. They want to create this gray world. Only that a savior can bring light to it again, and he can bring the colors again. So this is the reason why they also are going to create World War III. But if you want to understand me a little bit more, I highly suggest to look at a very specific small book called The Reappearance of the Christ from Alice A. Bailey. And if you don't know who Alice A. Bailey is, she is the spiritual philosophist of the United Nations. So you can, if you look at the United Nations and at the heads of the United Nations who have been there, they are all, or they all have a doctrine too, and they all have a goal too, and they have like those normal goals, but they also have I wouldn't say hidden, but a spiritual goal in the United Nations. And they have a spiritual philosophy, a spiritual doctrine, and it is mainly based upon Blavatsky and Bailey. And Bailey has some really interesting writings about exactly that situation. And I'm going to read you somewhat a section of that. So this is like the other side. We have the Quran, who gives us the fundamental truths about the world, but we also have the other side, I would say the furthest steps down the road on knowing what the elite really wants. And I'm just going to read that because I think it's very interesting. The major effect of his appearance will surely be to demonstrate in every land the effects of a spirit of inclusiveness, an inclusiveness which will be channeled or expressed through him. All who seek right human relations will be gathered automatically to him, whether they are in one of the great world religions or not. All who see no true or basic difference between religion and religion, or between man and man or nation and nation, will rally around him. Those who embody the spirit of exclusiveness and separativeness will stand automatically and equally revealed, and all men will know them for what they are. So this is like exactly the same situation that the narrative of the Quran implies by his setting of warning. Isn't that interesting? I'm going to read you a couple of more like it is everything in this book. We have everything. We have what you should read that book. Read that book. It is like the biggest, the most important book I have read in the long time when it comes to understanding the elite. But maybe I will do an extra video about that. because we have everything. We have what the New World religion will look like and everything. We also have reincarnation and immortality. Everything that I stated before is from that book. And like I said, it is obvious if you really understood it. Yeah, their way is a spiritual way. Their goal is a spiritual goal, and it's ultimately to fulfill the promise of Iblis, and with the same means that that always have been. To say we are the gods. Man is God, and God became man in Jesus Christ. He is your savior. So there's more to that than just religious nonsense. There's a lot of that. The Trinity is also a lot more in depth and a lot more logical than you would assume. But they want to. You have to look at it that way. We have two main doctrines in this world. We have the truth of God existing. In the case of this is the spirit of exclusiveness, so that we seek the outer. We know that there is something who created us, and so on and so forth. And there is the doctrine of inclusiveness, which is I am God, and everything else is God, and the God of Abraham and Moses and so on and so forth does not exist. And the elite, or the head of the elite, were the first ones who had this so-called illumination, that they realized, well, I am God, and the Son is God also, and everything else. But the God of Abraham does not exist, and he's the system of religious doctrine in the sense of the Abrahamic tradition, the Abrahamic creed in form of the Bible or the Quran, are just chains and are evil, because they sanction and they are unnatural for the human. So they see themselves as the saviors of mankind, who will bring the true and the natural order for all men with their doctrine of Iblis, of Lucifer, of the Messiah, of the illuminated Illuminati. Look at the $1 note. Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order for the ages. It's in Latin. Who speaks Latin? The Vatican is the only country. And the Vatican is also the most powerful country, and we have the Pope, who is the substitute for the Christ. So he's in Catholic dogma, he is the representative of Christ. He is the representative of God on the world. And he's also the spiritual leader. He's not the spiritual leader of the UN, but every I don't know how it is more obvious than that. They exist for over 2,000 years. Their normal name is Holy Father. So if you want to write a letter to the Pope, you have to say Holy Father. All the presidents who are in suits come and kiss the ring of the Pope. And I don't know, it's so obvious. It is obvious when you are, of course, in this realm of understanding, and if you have understood it all. But this all that I have been digging through was on the basis of the Quran, because I didn't look at the initial words that are used and I say, oh yeah, in this case it was all my people, but on that case not, and so on and so forth. Because on the big picture, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense that we can warn the elite now just by saying, oh, stop using usury and stop killing animals and so on and so forth. It is more probable that my theory, that my thesis about that is true. So I'm always thinking about making a really detailed video about that, so we can look at not about Sam's thesis, but about mine, and how I depicted all of that, and how I understand all of it. But in the end, I want to say that you have to look at the words of the Quran not only as a mathematic puzzle, but as an organic, as a living thing, and as something that you can connect with the real world. So we have Pharaoh. It is the Pharaoh. Who was the Pharaoh? And then it goes on and goes on, and so you can connect all those things, and they resemble the truth of this world, of the reality. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think you learned a lot more. I am currently busy with understanding all of it, and trying to get everything in a compromised way, in a summarized way, so that it is like a little documentary. I'm not very good at like the structure and so on and so forth. I'm a very intuitive person who thinks as he's speaking, and let's see what is better. So I hope you learned something, and God willing, we'll see us in the next video. But I have to say one thing again, and that is all those Sam Garens fanboys who always criticize me and always dislike my videos. Isn't it interesting that you yourself never did a video, and that you just repeat the words that he says, and you dislike my videos, but you never give a constructive argument why you do so? I don't know. It's kind of sad. But I will keep pushing forward, and yeah, that's it. Peace.